Thank goodness for people like Lynn McTaggart and Greg
Yes.
Braden and those who are working with global consciousness issues.
So let's do that right now. Let's, with our beautiful community joining together, let's create a field of coherence. And I invite you to close your eyes. You may even wish to place your hands in a posture where you are both sending energy and receiving energy. And in this infinity loop of connection between sending and receiving, let's place our attention into our soul. Each of us has a soul. And our soul, while we feel it is the individual soul, for us, it is part of a collective family of souls. We are connected by soul family. And our intention is that in this space that we are creating this field together with soul family, we send a wave of benevolence and hope and peace to every soul that is on the planet during this time of great shift. And so we just send the wave, benevolence, hope, peace to every soul right now on our beautiful planet that is going through a great shift. And in these next few weeks and months to come, we will radiate this experience of benevolence, hope, and peace outwardly, just as an energetic field. Nothing to be said, simply just to be in that space of radiating out into the soul family. You may now gently relax your hands as we welcome the continuation of the energy of benevolence, hope, and peace from Kryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. We have said so often that this is not a message that is global, but a message that is personal. We'll say that again. These are indeed difficult times for so many. And yet we have said and will continue to say that the shift is upon you. This shift, which was predicted by the ancients, was predicted so many times in my channeling before 2012, is here. Almost a decade into it, now you see what we were talking about. It's not necessarily a shift that's going to bring you wars between countries like you thought might happen at this time. It's a war, a true war of dark and light. And you're starting to see the results of it. The answers that were given, even today, are about getting away from the fray to a position where you can see and feel your own magnificence and get yourself through it. Really, there are several aspects of this How do you create more light? How can we move, you would say, this planet into more light, into more peace? That is one aspect. But while you're doing it, how do you survive it? How can you be coherent with that which is spiritual when all around you there's noise of darkness? And so we bring to you a series of channels to help you understand more of who you are, to help you get to that place. These 4 channels this month are going to be called the extraordinary human soul. Or if you want to relabel them, the extraordinary attributes of the soul. Any of those things, we are talking about your soul. There'll be 4 channels, all of them available to everyone. Dear ones, we have spoken about the soul since we arrived. 31 years we have talked about the human soul. In 2014, we developed a program. I asked my partner to put this together where we talked about the attributes, the 9 attributes of the human soul and how they interfaced with you, your Akash, and all of the pieces and the parts of you that are esoteric, even your innate. That teaching we may do again, and I'll say that again. But for now, I'd like to speak about 4 extraordinary attributes that you need to be reminded of at this point in time, so that you will understand who you are. Wow. If you could see yourself like we see you, it would take your breath away. Magnificent. Not just biology and a skin, with a brain, with some consciousness. That's so often how so many of you just see yourselves. How are we going to get from A to B, and how are we going to work this puzzle and get through it all? Oh, there's so much more going on. I would like to remind you of how big you are. The human soul, something that is a spiritual part of you, acknowledged worldwide. We have said this before. Every religion, belief system on the planet has some kind of metaphor for a bigger you, a soul. Those who work the oceans talk about numbers of souls on board. There is an acknowledgement from all Scripture that there is something bigger than you. It's a shame, dear ones, that a linear planet with linear belief systems that are supposedly ones that are worshiping a magnificent God would then tell you the soul exists for one reason: to be punished later or to be rewarded later. It's almost like the soul is some kind of a vehicle. Punishment or reward. You have something that happens after you die. Does that sound right to you? Your soul is part of the creative source. Did you know that? I'm going to talk about how big you are. How big is the soul of a human being? There are those who actually tried to put measurements on it, saying, well, it has to do this and that, perhaps mixing it up with that which is called the Merkaba, which is a spiritual bubble around you in linear form while you walk the planet. Huge it is. 8 meters wide around every single human being. That's not your soul. Let's talk about this. When did humans get their soul? And the answer is yes. They never did. It always was. Did you know that? This is a lesson that is difficult to teach and understand and cognize because the human is linear. Another time we have said this. Everything has a beginning and an end to you on your planet. Whether it's your life or your car or a pair of socks or a string. It has a beginning and an end. And so this is how you think. Of course, until you get to God. What was the beginning of God? And you would say, well, there was none, because God always was. Well, dear ones, use some spiritual logic. If your soul is part of God's creative source, it always was. You, the bigger you, the soul of you, always was. Always. And you always will be. And you might say, well, that doesn't make sense. How does this then relate to humanism and all of these things? Dear ones, this is a puzzle to you. It is not to us. And we've explained it many, many times. This soul of yours, designed to do the very things you're doing now, to come to various places and take human form and develop consciousness and work the puzzle. And then when you're done, you go back to the soul and it goes perhaps someplace else. It's all part of a universal system of beauty, benevolence, kindness. And there is a purpose for it. There's a purpose for the veil. All of the things. There's a purpose for free choice, of having you here on this planet being able to make choices without interference from an angel standing next to you saying, don't do that. There is a reason. But your soul is immense. How big is God? You would say, okay, I understand what I don't understand. That the soul is huge and immense, but I'm a human. And I'm here right now. How does that help me? And I will tell you this, because there is a multi-dimensional part of every single human being. And it's not sequestered into that which is perhaps your pineal. It's in your DNA. It's in every cell of your body. It is starting to receive light. That is what the shift is about. Listen, the shift on the planet is about you receiving more multidimensional savvy, more multidimensional awareness, which is starting to evolve into higher consciousness. Do you want that again? This is evolution, an evolution of consciousness. And that's what is happening. You are starting to receive that multidimensional part. And that is creating the evolution of awareness, light, consciousness. That is the thing that is stirring everything that you're seeing right now. And that is also going to stir into some solutions, because all of you are going to become more aware. Kryon, I'm not really sure I understand how we can be multidimensional. What does that mean? Let me give you a hint. Something we have given you before to show you this equipment you have called DNA, called cellular structure, called consciousness, is not simply in your skin. Your body's in your skin. Your consciousness and the multidimensional parts and pieces of your DNA is immense. Identical twins. Let's go there again. Identical twins on this planet. Do you know any? Would you like to speak to them about what I'm going to say next? They'll tell you. One can be in one hemisphere of this planet and another can be in another hemisphere in this planet. But when something happens that might affect them both, like for instance, their mom's in trouble, they both know it. One will pick up the phone, and the other one will answer, and the other one will say, I felt it. What's happened? In other words, with identical DNA, two human beings, two individuals, two consciousnesses are allied in such a fashion that thousands of miles away, they're getting the same information. That has a physical nomenclature, a term, a name, and it's called entanglement. It is a quantum aspect, and that is, a quantum aspect is one that is beyond linear. Entanglement, well known now to physicists, is something that is astonishing. Where you are so big, if you're entangled with anything, that you could be on another star, another planet. And if something happens here, the other part of you would know it instantly. Distance doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. That exists. Ask a physicist. It's real. And it's happening even within your DNA. How big are you? You're as big as God. I want you to understand that you have the ability to drop into your soul, into your heart, they say, and have the most benevolent wave of love come over you, where actually that consciousness of yours will stop the rhetoric of all the negative things and say, it's all right. I am that I am. I am beyond what I ever will be. I came before I was. That is a multidimensional statement. And you will know who you are, helping you to get through all of the strife that is so linear and so now. There is hope for this planet, dear ones. There is hope. There is solution, if you will hold on to it. That's the thought. That's the light. Light is starting to amplify itself, and in the process, it's disturbing the dark a lot. And the darkness wants to raise up and tell you it won't go away. But light will win this puzzle. Light is already winning in certain areas. Hold fast. Know who you are. I am Kryon in love with humanity. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. Indeed, these are times where we speak to you personally. Some have felt that channeling is not personal. They felt that these are messages for the planet. The planet, dear one, made up individually of you, and you, and you, and you. And so, from my standpoint, and all that I am as a messenger to you, in love with humanity, is person to person. It's how I feel it. It's how the messages are structured. All of these years, you might have heard me say, dear one, or dear ones. Seldom do I address a full group of humanity. These are personal messages. This particular month, I have chosen something, and I told you last week that the theme is the soul. Now that is a very big theme. I also told you that in 2014, I gave my partner a series of informational attributes about the human soul, 9 of them. It was a program for more than 2 years, given in 5 languages, called the 9 Attributes of the Human Soul, something that may yet be taught again. But this month, I'm going to give you, and told you last week, 4 extraordinary attributes of the soul. Extraordinary. The soul itself is extraordinary, and last week we gave you the immensity of what it might mean actually to have a soul. And this week is the most complex, and we have saved it for members. Because those who would watch this particular show through the intent that you have given to do so would be considered those who would be wanting to know these things, as opposed to those who would tune in just casually and then be totally confused. This extraordinary attribute of the soul has been channeled many times. We've discussed it many times, and yet it is still not understood. We've had several labels we have given it to make it easier, and yet it's still not understood. The reason it is so difficult to understand is because the attribute that I'm about to give you sometimes is disappointing. It's disappointing because you live in a linear world and you want things to be a certain way. And when you learn they are not on the other side of the veil, there is disappointment. When I was a child, I was told all about heaven. I was told that there were streets of gold. I was told that when I got there, that I would have nothing to do all day long but fun things. Perhaps if I was older, I'd be in a rocking chair. And on and on and on. I was given as a child a linear description of something that doesn't exist, but something that is grand on the other side of the veil, an existence with God. True. This is true. And yet it has nothing to do with golden streets or a rocking chair. And when I discovered that, I was disappointed. I wanted to see the streets of gold. This is what I speak of, because when I tell you this extraordinary attribute of the human soul, you're going to go, say what? Because you're not going to like it. Unless you truly, truly understood the beauty and the majesty and the grandeur of what it is that I'm going to say. We started by describing it in 2014 as soul splitting. And we said that every time you pass over in human form, a piece and part of your soul stays with the loved ones on the planet. Now, this begs in a very important question. You mean to tell me that a piece of my divinity is like torn away and given to somebody else? That is so linear. That's that street of gold. And the answer is no, that is not the way it is. And so we reframed it so you'd be more comfortable, and we then called it soul sharing. You see where this is going? And that was better, because now you have the idea that you're keeping part of it and just sharing it for a while. That isn't so either, but it sounded good. The truth is grander than you think. Your soul, you want to think, is a bubble with you in it. It's a grand bubble that is divine. It's a piece of God. You're eternal. These are all things that we have told you before, and that so many tell you, that your soul is actually a piece of the Creator. This is old energy that tells you otherwise. You are a piece of God. Therefore, when you pass from this place, you're not going to be punished. You're a piece of the Creator. Doesn't punish himself or herself. So what I'm going to tell you is this soul sharing, this soul splitting, is a beautiful concept because it implies that your soul is more than just you in a bubble skin, that somehow is beyond the veil floating around as you in some kind of a bubble, which is your skin on the other side of the veil. In other words, you're contained. Well, you're not. If you understood multidimensional things, you'd understand there is no containment vessel. There is no bubble. There is no skin. There's nothing that would then outline how big your soul is. It just is. How big is God? You want to outline that? You want to put God in a skin? And the answer is no, you cannot. And you cannot do that with your soul either. The star mothers in Lemuria used to give the example of this to the children and say, how big is joy? Draw me a circle. And they couldn't. And they got the impression, understood, there are some things that are so beautiful that they expand and contract on their own, and they don't have skin. They don't have a container. So how does this soul sharing work? I could give you the workings of it and how it works, but that's not as near as important as what you understand the extraordinary factors of it is. You are never, ever alone. You share this grand thing called the soul with so many others, and they share you with them. Now you might say, well, I'm not understanding. At what point does a sharing happen so that there's more of me with them than with me? And I'll say to you, how linear of you. You know, it's not a vessel that you're pouring things between. Do you have any trouble with the fact that God can be in a million places at the same time? And if you're praying, do you wait in line? Or when you're praying, do you say, well, I feel bad that God is also listening to someone else? And the answer is no. That never occurs to you. I want you to get used to the fact that these attributes that you apply to the creative source, to God, to the Spirit, whatever, apply to your soul. You are part of all of that. Therefore, all that is part of your soul. Can you imagine a very, very beautiful scenario where when you pass from this earth, a piece and part of your divinity stays with those around you who love you? Those who love you. I didn't say your parents or your children. I said those who love you. And that is a bit different. And that's for a reason. And that reason and that design and that entire system, if you want to call it, is for benevolence and beauty and kindness. And many know what I'm speaking of. It tempers the grief of a loved one who passes. And if you really are with the program and you understand that, you feel that loved one until it's time for you to pass. And then you pass that on to yours. What a system. But in order for this to work, it's soul sharing. It's like you climb into their soul for a while. And in the process, there is benevolence and beauty and compassion for them and for you. This is what the soul truly is about. It's for sharing. Some will say, I still don't understand. I'll give a linear example because so many want this. If you could put your soul in a bowl and you put water in the bowl and you look at your loved one and they have a bowl and they have water and you decide to scoop some of your water into theirs and some of their water into yours. As you look at your water, do you then try to identify whose is whose, or is it simply water? And the answer is it's the water of your soul, and it just happens to contain some of their water. Do you understand? And so it's not about containing or who's got how much of what. That is a linear proposition. Instead, you might say, is how big is joy? How big is love? That soul of yours, right now as you sit there, with that amazing akash you have, is filled with loving entities of the past. That's a big one. The people you have loved and lost, the people that they have loved and lost, included you as one of those they lost, all there. And this then drives the Akashic family, some of whom you are with, some of whom you were drawn to on this planet to rekindle the love affair. Mother, father, sister, brother, partner. It is a system of grandness that goes beyond anything you ever expected. It is extraordinary. You are magnificent, and your soul echoes all of that. I am Kryon in love with humanity. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. Once again, we come to you in this place of grandeur, healing, magnificence, because you're here. We have said this before. This is how Spirit sees you, dear ones. The magnificence of the human being is the starting point that we come from when we speak to you. The irony is that so many humans don't feel magnificent. Dear ones, I want to talk to you more about these things and some of the helps in the past. And it has to do with your soul. We've spoken of the soul every week, and we will continue to. This particular channel, this message about the extraordinary things about your soul is a bit different. We've spoken about these attributes before, perhaps not exactly in this way. I want to talk about guides and angels. Question: Kryon, where do guides and angels come from? The answer that you would expect from any spiritual leader, or perhaps a channeler, they would come culturally from what you call heaven, the other side of the veil. That's where they come from. What if it wasn't? What if it was, but it wasn't exactly as you think? What if instead it was built into a process of help for all of you that comes, are you ready? From your own soul. When you have spiritual history, you can examine some of the attributes of those who have seen angels. Almost all of the encounters that have been written with angels are personal. That is to say, an angel did not call a meeting. So you don't normally have a lot of people watching an angel present. There is often personal experiences, but very seldom group experiences with angels. Because, dear ones, almost always an angel appears to an individual. And that particular angel can look any way that individual might imagine an angel should look. Sometimes what you would call angels appear completely and totally different because they have to. What if I told you that an angel, and they exist from your soul, what if I told you an angel actually has no shape at all? That it's a multidimensional energy that is so potently there in front of you that the subconscious mind creates a vehicle to imagine it. What I mean by that, do you really think that an angel from the creative source, that is the heavens, even before earth or humanity was made, the heavens were there and the angels would appear then as a woman in a nice outfit with a halo? You'd say, well, perhaps not. But that is the way so often they're depicted. Almost always in white, of course. Everything means something else. Your subconscious wants to see mother. That is another profound proof, as we have said, of the divine feminine in all of you that wants to see mother when it comes to angelic principles. And that particular female, always beautiful, always profound, with wisdom, perhaps with a halo, which means something else. It means spirituality. Did you ever think of that? I told this once, and I mention it again. My partner was sitting on the top of a mountain called Mount Sinai. He had just climbed the mountain in the dark from midnight, and he was tired. And the message I gave him, of course, was about Moses. Talked about Moses' unwillingness, really, to have the mantle that he was given. But he did it anyway. And he did it because he saw the profundity of all that he was called to do, even though he didn't feel worthy of it. He was there and gave his best. And history will show it was good enough. That was the place, supposedly, where he saw the burning bush. And we've told you before that the burning bush was not a bush at all. Supposedly, the description was a bush that did not consume itself with the flame that he saw. That was an angel. But in his day, in this time, that's all that he saw, because that is the picture of what it meant to him. It needed to be something that got his attention, even more than a woman, perhaps, in a nice outfit with a halo. A bush that stood in front of him, and a voice came out of it. And the voice that he didn't tell you was feminine. That's an angel. Guides are the same, but let's stop and talk about what is going on there. Dear ones, there had to be a system of communication that was spiritual when you needed it, for even those who didn't even believe there could be a God. There had to be a system, because there are some individuals on this planet, especially those walking in a darker time, a time where nothing was acknowledged as simple as a monotheistic God. There had to be a system where the soul could speak to you of greater things. And sometimes those things were frightening, very frightening. Imagine having an energy come to you and speak, an energy that spoke, and your subconscious immediately had to create a human so that it made sense that there was speech. Every angel who has come and been reported has said several words. Did you think about it? Fear not. That means don't be afraid of this. Why would anybody be afraid of a lovely woman with a halo? And the answer is because it was more than that. It was a tremendous energy sitting in front of you with a majestic voice, a female voice that got your attention, that said profound things that were recorded in history and became your scripture. There had to be a mechanism for that to happen that comes from your soul. Your soul is a piece of God. Your soul, we've told you, is immense. Your soul has so much in it that you're unaware of. The circle of 12 is a bridge that crosses to part of your soul and invites you to feel the immensity of it. The ancestors are there. Your Akash is there. The angels are there. God is there. And so this is part of the system of everything that is you. Angels come from your soul, and they come for you, and they talk to you, because it is from your own spiritual essence. Angels and guides often are used in the same phrase. Let's talk about guides. A little different than angels, aren't they? Now, an angel is seen as a profound experience. If you have an angel come to you, you're very quiet, you look at it, you either report it or you don't, because some people will not believe you. Those who have in history, it's always a profound experience and they have something to say. Now that is special, almost like a vision. Guides, however, are described as those entities that belong specifically to you that work with you every day. And they're not necessarily talking to you as much as they are pushing and pulling you through what we will call guided intuition to the right place to be. We have taught this for a very long time, dear ones, that your intent and your affirmations are then enhanced by your guides to help push and pull you into the right place at the right time for synchronicity, for healing in your life, for the right partner, for the right business. And that is how people see guides. Question, what do they look like? And the answer is yes. Any way you want them to look. Because indeed, they are not human. However, they are guides, and so you picture them as guides. And it's interesting how you would picture them. You'd ask one culture, well, tell me about your guides, and they'll say, oh, They're huge. They come in and they're 7 feet tall. And you talk to another culture, you say, well, they're actually about this high. And they come and they scurry around me. That tells you a lot about humanism. They are as you wish to see them. How many are there? Well, many people are saying, well, there's got to be 3. I always see 3. And we have told you this before, dear ones. There are no numbers of guides. All of that is symbology. The 3 is a catalyst for change. They exist to steer you into change. So you see them as the energy of the number 3, and you say there are 3 guides. Do you see where I'm going with this? Oh, there is so much there that you hadn't imagined. Where do the guides come from? They come from your soul. Your soul has the ability, because it stands apart from you on the other side of the veil and perhaps is not integrated yet with you, to start pushing and pulling and helping through intuition, guides, and angels, all from your soul. I want you to stop for a moment as we finish this channel. Think of the beauty and the love of the system. God would love you so much that even if you said, I don't believe in God and nobody can convince me, that there's still a mechanism to help you. Without saying, well, you have to believe it, there's still intuition that would move you here and move you there because of the love that is there. That is the teaching, and always will be, of the magnificence of the human being. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be loved this much. I'm crying in love with humanity, and so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. This entire month, I have been giving you a theme: the extraordinary attributes of the soul. This soul of yours. You say human soul. I'll say this again because it was brought up yet in the discussion of today. There are souls in this planet that you call human souls. But a soul is much larger than anything that belongs to a human. Would it surprise you if I told you there are spiritual beings all over this galaxy, perhaps even the universe as you know it, that have souls, and they're not human? A soul is a piece of God. It is an immense, immense piece. You might say it's almost as big as God if you could put a circle around God, and you cannot. We covered that in the first week. We told you about how souls share one another, and we are speaking now of souls that are human on the planet. We talk about this very, very complex subject of how you can actually have pieces and parts of you with others, and the beauty of that and the magnificence of it. We've talked about the multidimensionality of the soul and how it can be several places at once. And some will say, I don't understand that. How could I be multiple places at once? And I say, you don't have to understand it, dear ones, any more than you have to understand how God can listen to 1 billion prayers at the same time and still have a personal spot for you, your prayer and you. You are part of that arrangement. You are part of that energy of the creative source. That's how. We told you about guides and angels. This was perhaps one of the most, I would say, entertaining parts, because everyone seems to understand angels and have some semblance of what a guide might be in their life and respond to it even as children. And it's part of your soul. We gave you those 3 channels already this month. And we wrap it up with this 4th extraordinary attribute of the human soul, the soul, for you, dear ones. And it's the one that is the closest to you. It is the part of your soul that is common enough so that the definition and the words and all of that seems to be available, more available. If you said, what is soul sharing? Many people would say, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's a concept that is odd or strange. If you talked about the higher self, there would be an acknowledgement, oh yes, the higher self. There are many who would say that channeling in general, including what you're hearing now, is the human being being able to go to the other side of the veil, as you might say, popping into that soul across the bridge, and then channeling information from there. And that would be channeling the higher self. Is that the way it works? Well, that depends upon the definition of higher self. Number one, is it yours? Now, careful, because you say, well, of course, I have a higher self. Who else would it be? I talked about soul sharing. When you pop into that soul of yours, what if the entire universe is there? It's a multidimensional aspect of God. So is your higher self you, that's simply a higher vibration? Or does it represent something far, far larger? The answer is all of those, because it can be. It can be so small, it's like an atom. It can be so large, it's like the universe. Dear ones, your higher self is your relationship to your soul. The higher self is your relationship to your own soul. And it is partly in 3D. And that is why I've waited until this last session to paint a picture of this for you, so you'd understand. You might say, the divinity of your soul is partially available to you all of the time without even crossing that bridge we do, that the members all know about in the Circle of 12. That higher self, some have said, this is the angel on my shoulder. Some have said, this is the intuition that I count on. Others have said, my guides are one thing, my angels are around, but my higher self, this is the one. My own guide is my higher self. This is what many have said, because that's how they relate to something which is them, perhaps with their face, but is vibrating at such a high level that they can look up to it and say, that's my divinity. And yet it hides, does it not? If you talk to someone who was not in this session, perhaps, or listening to this channel, perhaps, in another culture, perhaps, and you say, tell me about your higher self, they would have no idea what you're talking about. Would they say, well, is it a saint in my church? And you'd say, well, not quite. And so they would not relate to it. But you may. Because here, and I'm going to give you right now something that's quite controversial. Does everyone have a higher self? The answer is yes. Every single human being has a higher self. That higher self, is it always available? Yes, it is. Always available. What does the higher self do? Let's get to that. But the big question is this: if everyone has it, why isn't everyone aware of it? And the answer is because this is the attribute of your soul, the most beautiful attribute, the closest one, that simply sits back and waits for you to acknowledge it. Were you aware that the almighty presence of the divine creator has given you free choice to find your sacredness or not? There's nothing on this planet that says you have to find the higher self. This is the free choice you have. There are millions on this planet who are not interested in their divinity. There are millions on this planet who will go all of their lives and not even want to discover it because they feel they have what they need. And in 3D, they're in survival mode. They know how to go from A to B. They got it figured out because that's what they were told. Or their parents never broached the issue. Or they never had any friends who said, did you know there's a God? And they say no. And all that time, the guides and the angels are there. And the higher self is there. And their soul is there. How does it make you feel to know that all the tools you've ever needed to heal yourself, to move into that job you want, to create the synchronicity that you're asking for, all of that comes in with you. And it waits. It waits for you to acknowledge that it exists, number one. And that often would create an awakening. And that awakening the human being has to a greater truth, perhaps, would then have them start to ask questions. Well, how do I know you're there? And then there's the proof period. What do I do next? And then there's the synchronicity period. And finally, you get to understanding, I'm an old soul on this planet. I can create my own reality. I can heal myself. I can use everything that has been given to me that I've had from birth. This is a premise that you're probably not even aware of. There are those who say, well, God really loves me. God's going to show it. God's going to rescue me from this and do these things. And I've been told that all I have to do is sit here and it's going to happen. There is some truth to that. And the truth is this: God loves you. But you're going to have to shake hands with that. You're going to have to cognize it. It's not a handout as you would expect it. It's a hand from the other side of the family that's filled with love and says, are you ready to go to work? Are you ready to take the other part of you, cross the bridge, and start creating the beauty that will affect you and others, the planet, Gaia, the animals, the trees? Because you become a part, are you ready, of a group. The higher self is part of a group. It's so personal. There will be those who say, well, okay, how does it work? You said you'd say that, all right? The higher self is connected in so many ways to the other side of the veil, but humanness has its biology, it has its own attributes, and part of that, as suspected, is the pineal. The pineal that lines right up with the bindi, with the third eye, acknowledged in certain cultures because they know it and they feel it. There is indeed part of the multidimensionality of your body that transmits itself and receives through the pineal. This is a piece and a part of the connection of the higher self, the innate, all the parts of you that seem to be part of the other side of the veil or more knowing than your brain is. That's how it works. But that's not all. This higher self of you, of yours. Oh, you all have a higher self. And what have I told you about you all of anything? It means that when you get to that place where you cross the bridge and you go to that beautiful thing you call your soul and your higher self is there, all of the higher selves are there as well of your family. You cannot separate your higher self from all of the higher selves of all of the old souls on this planet. And that, my dear friends, explains synchronicity. Because you're all working together in order to make things happen if there are those who wish to look. Anyone who wants to hook into this plan, if you might say, this greater, bigger truth, you might say, can do it instantly. It's not a club. It comes with you, free choice. But when you start looking at that higher self of yours, it's not alone. It always involves others. The family, the higher self of every human being. That's in the field. And that creates the synchronicity that you've been asking for and looking for, that keeps you from the potholes of life and steers you with intuition into the most beautiful places you can imagine, which is what you deserve. That's what the higher self does. A group, not one thing. You want more? Come back and let's do some things in the circle of 12, and let's meet some of the others. And so it is.